Hi, I'm Dr. Joseph Marbach. At Georgian Court University, we're committed to educating the public about the importance of higher education and its impact on our communities. That's why we're proud to support the important educational programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation.
This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by Georgian Court University, Suez, ready for the resource revolution, Summit MD Anderson Cancer Center, QualCare Inc., a managed care company administering health plans that care about your health care, Johnson & Johnson, Gary's Wine and Marketplace, creating an individual shopping experience for every guest, and by the law firm of Gibbons PC. Promotional support provided by bestofnj.com, covering all New Jersey has to offer. And by NJ.com, small news, big news, true Jersey.
This is One-on-One. I'm an equal American just like you are.
The jobs of tomorrow are not the jobs of yesterday.
Look at this. You got this?
Here it is, man. Look at that.
Life without dance is boring.
When you first heard that they were doing Charlie Rose and Gayle King, didn't you go, what?
Do you enjoy talking politics?
No.
People call me because they feel nobody's paying attention.
Our culture, I don't think, has ever been tested the way it's being tested right now.
Such a good question. High five.
Welcome to the Tisch WNET studio here in the heart of New York City in Lincoln Center. It is our honor and our pleasure to welcome Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, best-selling author, commentator, scholar, and his new book out. Boy, it got me thinking. It's going to get you thinking. Tears We Cannot Stop. Good to see you, partner.
Always good to see you, my man.
Last time I interviewed you must have been about 10 years ago, earlier on in my career, and you had me thinking then, too. Yeah. We did 2 half hours with you back-to-back. We talked about the one issue I want to talk about with you today,
right.
And things have changed. Race.
Right.
The discussion on race has changed dramatically in this way. One of the things that struck me, I'll get right to it.
Right.
You said Barack Obama was not the president, was not the black president that black America should have elected, and that Donald Trump is the response? Did I get that wrong?
Well, what I'm saying is, let me give a little bit more context to that.
I'm sure there is.
I'm saying that Barack Obama was an extraordinary president. I'm saying that what he did for America was remarkable. What he did on race, not as remarkable. And he reminded black America, I am not your president. Okay, fine. We didn't think we had elected the president of the NAACP. We thought you were the president of everybody. But the reason he did that, a slight excoriation, was to remind America that I know that I'm the president of everybody and I don't want to kowtow to or capitulate to the interests of a narrowly defined group. That was, condescending, but we understood. And I'm saying his refusal to address race in specific and direct fashion, until forced to. We know that it was difficult for him as the first black president. You don't want to go out and put yourself in a black box. You don't want to ghettoize yourself as the black president. But that's different than addressing issues that happen to affect citizens who happen to be black. So I'm saying it created a space for Donald Trump, who was willing to talk about race. Donald Trump, good or bad, for ill or for better, saying, I'm going to take it on. Hey, you people in, urban America, I'm going to address your situation. You're not doing good under this president. Now, whether you agree with him or not, the point is he stepped into that vacuum. He deliberately and forthrightly addressed it. I happen to disagree with most of what he says, but he is at least forthright. And I think that Barack Obama created a condition where his procrastination, his reluctance to engage these issues, left the interpretation to somebody else and to forces that were, quite frankly, inferior to not only his intellect, but to his ability to understand the complicated and sophisticated nature of race.
What scares you about Trump when it comes to our relations together, our interaction together, because you've also said in this book, Michael, that you believe this is a critical point for our country as to whether we're ever going to be able to forget about coming together, just even talk.
Yeah, it's
versus
going in completely opposite directions. Look, if Steve Adubato is the president, my God, we've got the possibility of an intelligent guy, informed. We could disagree.
Good looking.
But extremely good looking and far better hair. But the thing is that we could engage in a conversation. I know that you understand the landscape. You're sensitive. You're empathetic, even if we disagree about issues. With Donald Trump, He says he has empathy. He says he has understanding, but I doubt it. I doubt it because you spent so many years castigating Barack Obama, the birther movement, amplifying the worst sentiments of race. All right, let's say that was a horrible situation. Now he's president. First sign, you put in Steve Bannon in the West Wing. Now, maybe he's getting further marginalized now. That's what I was about to say.
As we take this program in the spring, 2017, we'll see what happens. Go ahead.
We'll see what happens. But the fact is, he's amplifying a white nationalism that is problematic. And then Jeff Sessions is already doing things that are harming the historic legacy of civil rights in regard to the Justice Department.
Stay right there. We're doing a series on police-minority relations on public broadcasting, the consent decree, Newark, other places. Jeff Sessions saying, get rid of it. We'll racial profile and keep talking. That's right. That's extremely important. So all that stuff is out the door. The consent decree is out the door. The ability to talk honestly between law enforcement and American citizens out the door. So I'm saying Donald Trump has amplified the worst instincts of America, repudiated the best instincts of the previous administration, and leaves us without a basis to honestly engage the issue of race. Building walls, damning Mexicans, implying that Muslims are not really, truly American citizens and the like. I'm just saying we're in a very powerful racial miasma that leaves me worried. You know, but the other thing about this, Michael, in so many areas I agree with you, but other areas I struggle.
Right.
You tell very powerful stories. And I was talking to my wife, Jennifer, about this. You tell powerful stories about your own personal experience.
Right.
You were pulled over many, many times.
Sure.
Your children saw that in cases where I'm confident that would not have happened to me by police.
Right.
Treated in a way where I'm confident it would not have happened to me by police. The tears we cannot stop.
Right.
The tears of you and others who happen to be black. The other part of that, from my perspective, there's a part of me that struggles with the fact that there does not seem to be a sensitivity or an awareness of some of the fear, anxiety, and struggles of some who happen to be white who are convinced that their children are being shortchanged. Their children may not have the same opportunities for college or whatever.
Gotcha.
Right or wrong perception.
Great.
Fair not.
Right. Well, no, look, it's fair in this sense. Absolutely. When we look at new reports that suggest that increasing numbers of white Americans are dying deaths of despair, right? That the heartache, heartbreak, addiction, alcoholism, lack of... Yes, we understand, because we have suffered those same deaths without recognition. Look, when the plague of the political economy of crack in this country in the 80s besieged and ravaged black and brown communities, there was no empathy like, oh my God, these people are addicted or subject to downturns in the economy that have left them bereft of a safety net, and now they're being buffeted by these forces. It was your thugs, your criminals, your nihilists, your savages.
Deserve what you get.
Right. On the other hand, we've got young kids addicted to opioids or people who are addicted to meth. Oh my God.
It's a crisis.
Let's medicalize them. Look, and I'm down with the medicalization. Don't get me wrong. So yes, I have that deep empathy for that because I think it's right. I just want that to be extended on the other side of the aisle, so to speak, and to say that African-American, Latino, and for, quite frankly, even poor white people who are suffering in that devastating fashion, at least be honest about that and say this is something that we must all medicalize, not criminalize. We have built up, Democrats and Republicans, let's be honest, the prison industrial complex, which has put people increasingly into prison and jails and not giving them the same kind of relief from a medical intervention that might make their lives much easier, but also preserve their humanity in the face of their crisis.
And the title of the book?
Tears We Cannot Stop. The suffering, the pain, the agony, the invisible tears that many people don't often see. The suffering. You talk about some of the stories I tell. You can imagine, you're a tremendous father and mate. You know what it means to see your children like subject to forces you know are wrong, because you know they're decent. Other people may not, but you know that they're good kids. And you know, my son, a physician in New York here, anesthesiologist being pulled over, fearing that he will be killed in front of his son.
Excuse me for interrupting. By the way, you are a preacher also by background, and this is, you say it's a sermon. What have you told your son about that circumstance when it happens?
Look, I tell him, look, You always have to do whatever you can to alleviate the fear, whether right or wrong. You have to alleviate the fear of that cop, like all of us as Americans have to do, but there's an extra layer there. You have to alleviate the fear. He did. He said, I did everything you told me. I tried to put this cop at ease, and still there was a resentment. So I tell him, look, I was talking to Eric Holder, then the Attorney General of the United States of America, not long after Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman. He couldn't tell me what he would say to his son. He says, I'm the Attorney General. You run, you get shot. You don't run, you get shot. If you stay still, if you put your hands up, if you don't put your hands up, and this is just with the police, it's an extremely excitable situation for many people, but a lot of people are skeptical. They say, come on, you must have done something. They don't believe the fact that when some police show up, the very fact of my blackness is a threat, is a danger. Now, we know that police exist in horrible situations where they're doing extraordinarily valorous work and heroic work, and a lot of people don't recognize. Whatever your color is, we get that. But we also understand the disproportionate concentration of and racial profiling of black and brown people. Why is it that black and brown cops don't usually, I'm not saying not always, don't usually end up in the same fiascos, hurting, harming, shooting, or killing people of color?
Why is it? Do you understand?
They do. I mean, look, if you grow up in a situation, you're from Canarsie, you're from Bensonhurst, and those people, you know them. Hey, he just looks, he ain't gonna do anything, right? But if you're coming in from Delaware and you're policing Freddie Gray in Baltimore, you don't live there, you don't know those people, they don't look like your own kind, and all of us do that. These are not my people, I don't know them, and as a result of that, you are emboldened or you feel endangered, and now the clock begins where it's a tick, tick, tick down to the degree to which I will be abused, potentially.
So, doctor, pastor, Michael, how are we ever really going to be able to have an honest, genuine conversation about race between and among the races without all the rancor and the anger, or is that a pipe dream?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's a pipe dream. I think honesty on both sides. Look, when I listen to Donald Trump says, hey, we're not going to be politically incorrect and people voted for that, well, what do you mean by that? If you mean by political correctness, I want to continue my ways of bigotry and insensitivity toward women or gays or queer people and blacks and browns and poor white people. Look, that's not going to help America because you can't receive it. Can you hear what you're willing to give? Honest conversation. I teach at Georgetown University. Right. Last time I checked, it was not a historically black college or university. So I've been teaching for 25 to 30 years, young white kids in America.
You got white students there.
Oh my God, most of them.
That's right.
Extraordinary, insightful, willing to be self-critical. The hope of the future to me is young people like that who say, look, I understand white privilege. I understand what it means to possess a certain kind of outlook and understanding, and I want to engage. And my classrooms are safe spaces for everybody.
Every point of view. Someone voted for Trump like Trump. How do you deal with it?
Look, I tell them about how Trump met me, right? You know, I tell that story in 30 Rock in the elevator.
That's right.
You've been very tough on me, but I love you.
He said that to you?
Literally. And he says, and if I had your pipes and your brains, I'd be president now. This is when he's running. And then he took a picture. You know how you do with girls? No disrespect to the president. You know how you do with some girls like, oh, okay, I don't want to be seen in public with you, really. So we go to the side, we take a picture. He then takes me down the aisle. This is one of the smartest men in America. Donald Trump 101, one of the most charismatic guys. I don't care what anybody says. A charismatic guy. It's the public policy that's problematic to me. It's the assault upon the interests of those who are vulnerable that's problematic to me. So if we can find a way, many of us, to sit down honestly and openly and discuss, I think we have a tremendous possibility of turning this around. But it has to be honest, open conversation where all sides are willing to hear.
Even when we say, Michael, we don't understand and we're also angry and we literally don't get it. And cops who are saying you don't get our world and the fact that we are on the other end. And many of the cops we talked to in our series on police-minority relations say they feel targeted.
Sure.
They feel like they are under siege.
Well, look, I can understand that.
Pandora's box, but
I can understand that. But look, it's not equal, is it? If you, as a cop, meet a citizen, I'm not talking about somebody who's a criminal is going to kill you and so on. I'm talking about you as a citizen. I meet you, you're armed, you're to the teeth because you're representing the state. You have the imprimatur of the state. And if you end up hurting, harming, or sometimes even killing a person, the likelihood of you being brought to justice is nil. So I'm saying, first of all, it's not even equal to begin with. And then secondly, I can understand people feeling targeted in the sense of we're demonizing this particular group. That's why I say let's not even talk about cops per se in terms of bad versus good. Let's talk about a system that creates an opportunity either to, to de-accelerate, so to speak, and calm things down, and to have open conversations where we can talk.
The name of the book is Tears We Cannot Stop. The author is an extraordinary scholar and man.
Thank you.
An American. His name is Michael Eric Dyson, and you honor us by being with us. And by the way, it was Toni Morrison who said, elegantly written, a work to relish. She's right as usual.
Thank you, sir.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
To see more one-on-one with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at steveadubato.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, Ph.D. and follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
September 5, 1989 is going to be the first show. Now, he and I never do a practice show together. We never have a warm-up show. We barely had a meeting.
I don't care about one game, dog. And say it again, one game. Mike, that doesn't mean anything. Can I talk for a second? Yeah, but who cares about one game? Can I talk? Maybe the fans do. I don't care if you do. Maybe some of the fans do. Maybe they do. I hope they heard it already, but go ahead. Let's just go to the calls.
The first day, to be quite honest, it didn't turn out too well.
I can't understand what Chris is saying. Mike is stepping all over him. They're not meshing.
You want to say that's all injury. Well, this is going to last year's. What is it that, if it's not the home run, what stands out? Can I talk?
It was a two-person show with one man trying to dominate it, which was Francesa.
I never thought that at that time that Dog could stand up to me in a sports argument. I never thought he could.
I walked out of there and I said, geez, I need a stiff drink. This is going to be freaking hard.
That was uncomfortable to listen to, and you're right. That got a little acid. You're right. Francesa showed no respect for Russo, which is not good.
Can this marriage be saved?
I got home that night, and my wife looked at me. She said, how'd it go? I said, terribly. She said, what do you mean? I'm listening to it. It's fabulous. I said, do you think so? She said, I've never heard anything like it.
Oh, that is good stuff. And Ted Shaker is the executive producer of ESPN Films. Mike and the Mad Dog, part of the great 30 for 30 series on ESPN Films right now in the Tribeca Film Festival. It's going to premiere this summer, July 13th, ESPN, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are fans. How you doing?
Good, Steve. Thanks for having me.
I got to tell you, Mike and the Mad Dog, you cannot be a New Yorker or anywhere in the New York area without knowing these two guys.
Yep.
They don't hate each other.
Nope.
But there is something about them when they were in that studio. They have not been together doing a broadcast for a while. You were just saying that they were at Radio City or doing something, charity for Field of Dreams.
Garden of Dreams for MSG.
What was it about their chemistry day one?
Day one, it was terrible. Day one, as we just saw, it turned out to be a disaster. Mark Mason, who was the last guy who spoke there, he's the one that put them together as the program director. He was quoted as saying on his way home, it was so bad that day, he considered driving off the George Washington Bridge. That's how much angst there was about the initial play. And it took them a few months to find their way. They were opposites. They wanted to work by themselves. They didn't have respect for the other guy as much. And then within 10 months, they are the #1 show in afternoon drive in New York, which is unbelievable.
How?
Why?
How with Francesa?
Yeah.
I still listen to Mike occasionally.
It's a solo.
He does let some people get a word in edgewise once in a while. Question.
He has to drink a Diet Coke.
He has to drink his Diet Coke. Yeah. He always has it right there. Yeah. Sometimes he can nod off. I've seen that. I don't want to get too snarky here. But I will say this. I'm a bigger fan of Chris. I got to say this. I got to tell you something. At what point does Chris decide I'm getting my voice heard and Mike, you're not cutting me off?
It took 19 years to get there.
But when does the chemistry start?
Well, the chemistry starts, I think, when there were a couple of stunts they did. Mike came up with this idea that people could girls could write in to have a date with Chris,
who was not married.
Who was not married, and and it was called Dog Day Afternoon. And whoever the woman was that won the contest, she and Dog went to see Cats on Broadway. I mean,
Yes.
So those sorts of stunts help to kind of make them feel good about one another. And then when they're number one in 10 months and everyone's life changes,
They're making money.
They loved each other for some period. I mean, that's just natural, right? They're huge successes. They own the city. Is Dan Foer, who's the director of this doc and is a hugely talented guy. Dan Foer says, you know, what you have here is one of the most famous sports teams in New York, and neither of them ever played a game.
What did they do to New York sports radio?
Created it. In many ways. I mean, a guy named Jeff Simoleon, okay, MS Radio, he's the guy that said, let's try an all sports talk show. This is
People said, you're ridiculous. Who's going to listen to
this?
that?
This is 1987, 1988, and then they had WHN, used to be, a country music station. At 3 o'clock one afternoon, it became the first all sports talk radio station in the country. And it was Jim Lampley and it was Greg Gumbel. I mean, wonderfully talented people, but they didn't sound like New York, you know? They didn't sound like the people in the city who love sports. So Simoleon then, they lost a lot of money initially because it was not working. He decided, let me double down on this. He bought some NBC radio stations, including WNBC 660.
Howard Stern had to learn to say WNBC.
Yeah, well, that's, Don Imus, who we just
That's
saw.
right.
So and they switch it to WFAN, and they buy Don Imus with it, so they have a morning anchor.
Right.
And so there are people listening, but the rest of the day was not any good. And so this guy Mason says, I'm going to put these two guys together. I have no idea where it's going, and that's what happened.
How long is the run for them?
They went for 19 years.
So 19 years. They're number one. They're doing great.
Unbelievable.
Egos get involved.
You bet.
Why do they break up?
They talk about it almost like a marriage. After a while, it just it wasn't any fun anymore. And they, ironically, there are now 1,000 sports talk radio stations across the country, starting with WFAN. They saw how Mike and Chris did and how popular they were.
Right.
And so as Trog Keller, who's the head of ESPN Radio, said, it gave all these program directors permission.
That's right.
To try. And so now they're across the country. When they started, there were a handful of sports talk shows. Art Russ Jr. in New York, for example.
That's right.
Bill Mazier. And those guys would, they were solos. So this was the first duo.
But go back again. I need to get you to talk about this. In the film, will we see these guys talking about why they do not work together anymore?
Yeah, basically, Chris had an offer to do something on his own.
That's serious.
It's serious.
Big money.
Big money.
He wanted out.
He was ready to do a solo act.
Did Mike feel that Chris betrayed him?
Mike felt that Chris could have been more straightforward when he was exploring this serious opportunity.
If Mike had an opportunity to go for that kind of money, would he have done it?
I don't know. He was making huge money at WFAN, and he wanted to continue to show that he could do it on his own.
So you're saying Mike Francesa, who is one of the kings of sports radio, and by the way, I'm not sure how long he's going to be doing this. I think he said next year.
The end of this year.
The end of this year. Is Mike not as big as he was without Chris?
Mike has continued to be number one or number two in afternoon drive for 8 years.
Yeah.
They left 9 years. They left. They broke up in 2008. So Mike has continued to own afternoon drive as a solo.
Didn't matter without Chris.
He's doing 5.5 hours a day.
What about Chris's career?
Chris is now at Sirius. They've created a whole channel
Mad
around
Dog Radio.
sports. Mad Dog Radio. It's a national show, so he has a different kind of approach than Mike.
Yeah.
Mike is doing, still doing the New York sports talk show. So that's different.
That night, or at the Tribeca Film Festival when it opened.
Yeah.
They were there.
Yes, they were.
What was the reaction to them? And was it their reaction to each other?
The reaction to the film was just wonderful. People laughed. I mean, it's a full emotional spectrum because the end is very emotional. But it's funny. We give them their due as the guys who have kind of helped to create, more than almost anyone else, this sports talk genre.
Yeah.
So they go up on the stage afterward. Andrea Joyce, the great NBC sports reporter, moderated a conversation with them for 25 minutes for the audience of 1,000 people in this theater who were all, I mean, it was like playing for a home team.
They're hardcore fans.
Huge. And she asked Mike, would you consider working together again? And Mike has always danced around that.
What did he
had
say?
A one-word answer, yes.
Did Chris say yes?
Chris was like, I've never heard him say that.
So, it could happen again.
Could happen again, as they say, 2.0.
2.0. Mike and the Mad Dog 2.0. The film is Mike and the Mad Dog, ESPN Films. What a great series, 30 for 30. I absolutely love it.
They are the state of the art.
It is the best. So here it is. Check it out. Ted Shaker, executive producer, terrific team working on this, where I am a huge fan of Mike and the Mad Dog. We wish you nothing but the best. Appreciate you coming in.
Thanks, Steve.
To public television.
Appreciate it.
Where it all happens.
I'm a big fan.
I appreciate it. That's it. It's the end of the show. See you next time on One-on-One from the Tisch WNET studio, Lincoln Center. Thank you very much.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by Georgian Court University, Suez, Summit MD Anderson Cancer Center, Qualcare Inc., Johnson & Johnson, Gary's Wine and Marketplace, and by the law firm of Gibbons PC. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.
At Gary's Wine and Marketplace, planning parties is our business. Our associates can work with you to plan the details. We offer an assortment of wine, beer, spirits, cheeses, party platters, accessories, and more. 4 locations in New Jersey and at garyswine.com.